it's Jennifer Lawhon with Lawhon Home Team, and here with your real estate market update for June. All right, well, it's all about mortgage rates. That's been the talk lately on the internet, on the news, with clients. So let's jump right in and just start with mortgage rates. We have the chief economist for Freddie Mac who says that mortgage rates continue to inch downward this week, but are still significantly higher than last year, affecting affordability and purchase demand. Heading into the summer, the potential homebuyer pool has shrunk, supply is on the rise, and the housing market is normalizing. This is welcome news following unprecedented market tightness over the last couple of years. The economic uncertainty is what is causing mortgage rate volatility. If you look at just a snapshot, this is from June 2nd. You've got your 30-year average was about 5.09%, so just about 5.1%. Now the 5-year ARM, adjusted rate mortgage, was 4.04%, but the ARM is not always something that people want to get. It depends if it just suits your needs at the moment, then that is a good mortgage to get. Now let's look at mortgage rates. This is starting from December 30th of last year up till today. You can see how we started at the end of last year, so this is December 30th, at a really good interest rate of 3.11%. But now you can see throughout the year how it's crept up. We actually got up to 5.3% in May. This was May 12th. We've come down a little bit at about 5.09. So you can kind of see we've got a steady growth with the interest rate so far for the first half of the year. Current mortgage rate compared to the last 5 decades. So now let's look at this in comparison, because I know a lot of people think, oh my gosh, these mortgage rates are so high. If you are a newer home buyer or a younger home buyer, you might not have been around long enough to see these fluctuations that have happened over the years with mortgage rates. These are the last few decades. If you look at 1980s, they got up to almost 13%. 1990s, you got the 2000s, were over 6%. 2010s, 4.09%. And you can see the dotted line kind of indicates where the current rate is. Overall, historically, these are still decent rates. Now let's look at mortgage rate projections. If you've looked at the last few months of my market updates, you can see that it's been pretty fluctuating as far as what's going to happen. And obviously the economy makes a difference, inflation makes a difference, and so what's going to happen is very hard to predict. So these are just current projections, and you can see that they're looking at staying at around 5.1% and hopefully not going up too much more. But again, it's all going to depend on what the feds also decide to do. So we're watching that very carefully. Here's a history looking back from 2016. You can kind of see how much the mortgage rates have fluctuated. Obviously, during the pandemic, we saw historically low rates. And now we're getting up here in the orange is what's going to be projected. What's good is they're not projecting anything too high right now. And if you remember a couple of market updates that I did, I had mentioned how you want to actually keep an eye on the 10-year Treasury yield. Because look at this graph, and I showed this kind of before. So in the blue is the 10-year Treasury yield. In the green is the 30-year market. And what you have here, the 30-year mortgage rate. And so what you have is, if you notice how the 10-year Treasury yield, right? Look at how in the last almost 50 years, the 30-year mortgage rate has moved pretty much in unison with the 10-year Treasury yield. So that is something you want to look at. The average spread between the two has been about 1.7. Let's look further. We're going to look up closer for just this year. So the first half of the year. If you look here, this is your Treasury yield, the 10-year Treasury yield. This is your mortgage rates. We've got about a spread since, well, June 2nd of about 2.2. But again, it seems to head with that. So watch the 10-year Treasury yield. Now, here's another question that we've had before. Are we in a housing market correction? Well, A correction is a decline of 10% or greater in the price of a security, asset, or financial market. So we're looking at home price forecasts. If you look at those, there's a few different, they're actually not too far apart except the MBA, but the average forecast is 8.9%. So right now, we're not even looking at a projected forecast of a decline at all. So the housing market is at a turning point. Danielle Hale says that we're starting to see signs of a new direction, but the ball is still in the seller's court in most housing markets. Here's your showing times. It actually skyrocketed over the last 2 years. Showing time is how many showings people have had in homes that are using the Showing Time app. Here is in the gray is kind of like the pre-pandemic. Now, during the pandemic and then through 2021, 2022, we've had more showings actually than we did before. Here's your pre-pandemic demand. That's your black line. We are well above that. Existing home sales, you can see how many we've had since 2017. So 2017 to 2019, those were your typical real estate years. We've actually seen more home sales in the last year. Again, the dotted line is your pre-pandemic sales. So we're actually above that now. I know, hard to believe. All right, so what's ahead? Now, we do not have a crystal ball. Nobody does. We cannot say specifically, precisely what's going to happen, but we can use some data to maybe help us a little bit. So the chief economist of MBA says that mortgage rates are likely to plateau near current levels. The financial markets have attempted to price in the impact of Fed actions over this cycle, and they are likely also pricing in the economic slowdown that will result. Once we are past this rate spike and associated volatility, MBA expects that potential homebuyers may be more willing to re-enter the market. Well, let's look at the 2022 total home sale forecasts. You've got Fannie Mae up to Freddie Mac, all within the this is in millions, by the way, still looking at good projections for home sales. And Realtor.com says that experts don't believe the market is in a bubble or a crash is in the cards, like during the Great Recession. The nation is still suffering from a housing shortage that has reached crisis proportions at a time when many millennials are reaching the age when they start to consider home ownership. That's likely to keep prices high. So what is a recession? The National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Recession also, by the way, does not equal a housing crisis. There are times when the house price changes during the last 6 recessions. There are times when the prices, you can see, have actually stayed in the positive. So it does not always mean it will be in the negative. So we have a mortgage expert here that says, if you are looking to buy a home, I would still recommend you do so even at the higher interest rates because we have no reason to believe that home prices will stop appreciating. Home values going up is only a problem when you're trying to buy. When you own, it's a gift, and that is so true. So let's jump into home sales. Now, average days on the market, 17 days. It's actually gone down, I think, a day since my last report, a day or two. Existing home sales. Now, if you look in the gray, that's 2020. The lighter blue is 2021. The dark blue is 2022. So we have seen less existing sales this year compared to last year, but still more than 2020. New home sales. Now, if you notice in the dark blue, there's also been less new home sales than seen last year in 2021. So that part we have seen slow down. Pending home sales. If you look at the black dotted line, that's the historically healthy level. So as far as right now, this starts at January 2021 up to January 2022. We're still in the healthy range, though, as far as pending home sales go. Percent of distressed properties, I know I keep showing this, but here's the updated one. We're still good. I mean, we're still very low. Look at this. This is 4% in January 2020, but for the last year, we're down at like 1% of distressed sales, which means foreclosures and short sales. Very good. What about home prices? Well, here's your sale price of existing homes. Overall, the average in the U.S., almost 15%. The South, I always say, we've been seeing very good numbers. You'll see that when I show the data for Orlando specifically. Home price is still going up down here. Year over year, the current has been 20.9% and a change over the last year, positive. The forecast is 5.6, and if that does happen, that's good. That just means a slowdown, not a depreciation, but a slowdown with appreciation. Housing inventory. Now, this is last month's. Remember, I like to kind of show you month to month. This is the data we had for last month for the seller traffic, and this is the data for this last one. We only had to know about to April. That's all we could get right now. But you can see some states have actually become stronger while other states have become weaker. Year over year inventory levels, you can see from last May up to April, we've been in a decline, and we know that's with the inventory. There's been more demand than we have on the market. New home inventory, though, has been in the positive, which we've been talking about. They're still doing really well. If you look at April this year, they actually had a bigger adjustment with their inventory, so even more now. And then we have new home monthly inventory. So dark blue is 2021. Light blue is 2022. Look at that from April. We're seeing a good amount. Now let's go to buyer demand. So there's been an unusual slowdown. Michael Lane says that April buyer activity was rather unusual since it typically matches March levels. But this year, April traffic was slower across all markets, pointing to competition softening. It contrasts with last year's dynamic when demand reached a feverish peak in April. So we have seen a slowdown from April. Now look at let's talk about the buyer traffic. This is from the last month's one. This is from what I showed you in the last report. Now let me click so you can see the next, how it's changed. There's been some weakening, especially out in the West with buyer traffic. Now, Arizona's been doing better. It's at about a stable. And then Arkansas, look at that. That's doing really well. But it depends. It keeps changing. Now let's end with our Orlando market updates. Let's talk about sales. Now, look at this for sales. We were seeing a decline in March and April, which we just talked about nationally. Look at May. We actually saw an increase last month in sales. And what about the home prices? What have we seen? Well, look at this. We have not seen a decline at all with the average sale price here in Orlando. If you notice here, in May, it's gone up even more. So the average sale price keeps going up here in Orlando. So if you want to buy, I would say buy now here. And new home builders, we've got tons. So if there's any new home builders you're interested in seeing, you can let us know. All right, we still have our summer buyer and seller guides. They're free for you, so you can just visit our website at lawhonhometeam.com and fill out the Contact Us form and let us know you would like us to send you a buyer and or seller guide. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use that number, or again, visit us at lawhonhometeam.com. Look forward to seeing you guys next month.